On this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast, we've got a special two-parter for you folks. You're going to want to listen to it all the way till the end. First off, we're going to go to Somerset, Kentucky, and we are going to talk about Jagdterriers. A couple of weeks ago, you heard me talk about my trip down to the American Hunting Terrier Association, the Jagdterrier group that puts on their annual field trial down there in Somerset. And I met a man named James Mills. I'd talked to James previously, but I got to meet him in person at the trials. However, he was so busy running that trial that I did not have a chance to sit down and talk to him. So what did I do? I loaded up the truck and I headed back down to Somerset because I felt like the story that he had to tell us about the history of Jagdterriers, the uses, how they came to the United States. I mean, he is a walking encyclopedia and one of the most well-versed people in the country on the subject of Jagdterriers. I'm not going to steal his thunder. I don't know anything about him compared to this man. He's going to tell you all about that. In part two, we are going to the Navajo Nation and we are going to talk to Calvin Redhouse. Calvin accomplished something this past week that I don't know that any person has ever been able to record this feat. He treed a mountain lion and a black bear in the same tree at the same time, and he has the video to prove it. I'm going to talk to Calvin about how this came about, get his thoughts on it, and share it all with you. So hang in there, folks. We got a hot track. The Old South dog box is rocking. It's time to dump the box.
It doesn't really kill them, even though it's a parasite on a honeybee, but it carries viruses that do kill the bees.
Right. Yeah, well, there's so much stuff going through. I can't believe the amount of how easy it is to pass information, but also how easy it is to pass misinformation right now. I've never seen anything like it. People talk about a world with a lack of trust.
No, I'm telling you.
It's
you don't know who to believe, really.
No, never.
You know.
So whenever you start talking bees and things, you get people over here that are saying it's the chemicals, and other people over here are saying that it's cell phones, and somewhere
people say it's global warming,
yes,
and that sort of thing.
Yeah, climate change,
and it may be part of it. Who knows? I don't know. I know the climate. It's all about the climate, for bees. Yeah. I know this spring, right now, we're in the midst of a huge flow, a nectar flow, but it's going to be over shortly, and then we're going to be in a dearth.
Yeah,
the middle part of the summer here, if the white clover doesn't pop, there won't be a lot of honey. But maybe it will. But now usually it's spread out. The first thing that comes in is probably bush honeysuckle. Then after bush honeysuckle, normally.
You have autumn olive down here?
No, we don't. Boy, I wish we did. I wish we had some autumn olive.
What about locust bloom?
Locust is the next thing, and then tulip poplar. Well, they're all three blooming right now. Yeah. And then the blackberries will be right behind them. And then, it's about over till the goldenrod blooms, and it's late before they'd ever bloom.
Mm-hmm. So can they sustain themselves between the
Well,
locust?
They can, but, you've got to – it depends on what you're going to do. Are you going to take all that honey from the spring? And then if not, you might have to feed through the middle. And then if you have a bad fall flow – you've got to feed right through August and September.
Wow.
I talked to Rick Sutton, and he, as of last week, he hadn't had any natural nectar. Of course, he went to Florida, and they had a drought. He went to Florida. He takes 1,000 hives to Florida, and he hadn't had any nectar since last July.
Wow.
Tough.
So they don't get an orange. He's not around the orange groves down there?
Orange didn't have any.
Because
didn't have any orange this year.
They
average 3 pounds a hive.
Late freeze got them, didn't it?
Probably did.
Yeah.
3 pounds per hive. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, I am sitting here with James Mills, and we're in, where are we at? We're somewhere around Somerset.
We're actually in Braunston, Kentucky, between Burnside and Monticello.
Yeah.
A little wide place in the road.
We came down here a couple weeks ago for the Terrier trials. That's why we're down here talking to you right now. But we're going by that sign, and my wife says, are we close to Monticello? It's not the Monticello that you're thinking of. It's
Yeah.
Monticello.
There's a Monticello, Utah. A good friend of mine has Jagdterriers. I just bred his female for him. He's raising a litter of pups in Monticello. Chad Reynolds, he's a falconer. He's got a friend named Troy Larimore and Tyler Sladen.
Okay.
You probably want to do something with Tyler Sladen one of these days.
I'm pretty sure I've seen his name on some of my social media stuff.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Which you've set this up perfectly. The reason I'm here talking to you is all about terriers.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the Hunting Terrier Association that you're involved in.
Right.
And terriers are so new to me. They're it's not that I didn't know they existed. I've kind of started to geek out a little bit on the ways they were traditionally used and more of the historical side of it.
Right.
And more of a deal where I'm looking at it wondering if I'm missing something,
Yeah.
Missing an opportunity. Have I missed part of my journey as a dog man and a houndsman? And they've always intrigued me. We've had we've had a couple Jack Russell Terriers. We had a Feist. The little dogs have always intrigued me, but I never really took a deep dive until about the last six months to a year looking at it. And I started watching what you guys were doing with the Yogs and stuff like that. So can we just talk, first of all, let's talk about the Hunting Terrier Association.
Okay. Well, several years ago, probably almost 9 years ago now, there were a couple of people trying to put something together. There was a Jagdterrier Association from the 50s and 60s. The first person to ever bring these dogs in the country was a fellow by the name of Max Teal in the St. Louis area. And he actually had a club associated with the German club. And they did their testing, and then they had a registration through the German club. And but that kind of fell apart. It's a lot of miles. It's a big place. Germany, at that time, there were dogs in other countries at the time, but most of the dogs at that time were in Germany in the 60s, early 60s. But, that's not a very big place, and they all had their local groups, and so you had a local group. And so we you had people in Washington, Pennsylvania, Texas, St. Louis, and in the 60s, the communication, just kind of fell apart. You can imagine you had to write letters and newsletters.
There were people still getting mail delivered by Post Rider in the 60s in certain parts of the country.
Yeah, and so...
Or seriously, down in this country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And so, that fell apart. Well, Max just kept raising the dogs, and he eventually went to just a local registration. One of these, I think he called it there was a state's kennel club, but it was just, just a kennel club. There were no UKC registration or no AKC registration. There's no AKC registration now. They're Foundation Stock Service, but not registered through the American Kennel Club. And so about 8 or 9 years ago, 2 or 3 people wanted to get something together, and one was a fellow out of New Mexico, and I had to make a decision which one of those guys I was going to be with. And so Cody Fritz and Paul Greenwood had a facility down there in Tyler, Texas, and so we all met down there. And we decided we'd start it, and they voted me in as president, and then we began holding trials. And we've developed some people like William Burns and Dallas area, just super dog guy, great gifts and good administrator. He's a vice president now. And then some folks up in the Midwest, Derek Ephraimson, and they're holding a trial there in over Memorial Day weekend. I'll be going up there for that.
Whereabouts is that?
That's in it's in I think the actual place, he's in Aberdeen, but South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
But the actual place we'll be going is one of those pheasant places, they have lodges in Groton, South Dakota.
Okay. I think I've been talking to David Williams some about
Probably.
that.
He'll be there. He's a vice president of that club, I think. David is, yeah. And so, it's just developed from that. We have these 3 trials. They're trying to hold a trial in upstate Washington or Oregon. I'm not sure. I think it's Washington, actually, in July.
Okay.
They're trying to hold one up there. So that'll be the 4th one if we get it held.
So you've got one here in Somerset. You got one up in South Dakota. You got
Tyler, Texas.
Tyler, Texas.
And then Washington, it looks like we're going to start that.
So what's the overall goal of the organization?
Well, I wish I had the mission statement in front of me, but basically it's to the purpose of the organization is to put the people together to maintain and develop the unique hunting qualities of the German Jagdterrier. And so, it's as much a part of the people as it is the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are a hold of the dogs, I have a fella that I know in these dogs, and he's not a friend at all. And you know how dogs, there's always some drama associated with it. But I send people to him just about every couple weeks to buy dogs. And I even tell him, I said, don't tell him I sent you. I said, because, the dogs, the dogs don't know who owns them, and so that's not a person I really can work with. And so this is to identify those people we can work with, the people that can work together. And it has such a good, it's just got such a good camaraderie. Mark called it down through there at the trial. Mark was from out there in St. Louis. He's a white dog guy. He's got Jack Russells. And he said, I like the and then he used the word camaraderie. And it just, here I am, we're in a church, and I'm a Baptist preacher. Every church got a little spirit about them, the way they interact with one another.
Right.
Some are real friendly, some are not so friendly. And this is, it's friendly, but people don't care to tell you the truth, And it's people are honest, and you have to be kind of thick-skinned.
Well, let me get back. I'll read the mission. I looked it up on your website.
Okay.
The mission of the American Hunting Terrier Association, the Jagdterrier Breed Club, is to provide Jagdterrier breeders with the tools and knowledge to evaluate their breeding stock through examinations, testing, competition, in order to maintain and improve the unique, versatile hunting character of the Jagdterrier in America.
Right. And, of course, that tools, one of those words, tools there, is the individuals, the people.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing in the world for Boogie Gonzalez, for instance, down there in Texas, was to meet William Burns, and they just raised a litter there together, and it's going to be a super litter.
Yeah?
Yeah, the puppy was a hind trial, and
So when you talk about it's. Anytime you get people involved, you're going to have conflict.
Oh, sure. And we've had some, and we'll have more.
It doesn't matter whether it's your Baptist church here.
Right,
exactly. It's the Jagdterrier Association. And we always talk about that in our podcast here. We've got to be able to put aside, I don't agree with my wife on everything.
Right.
I probably disagree with her more on things than I agree with her most of the time.
Exactly.
But we've been married for 26 years. We don't have any. We've got plans for the future.
Sure.
So, and if I disagree with her about something tomorrow, is not going to be the end of that. Right. So, and what we do is so special as hunters and using hounds, and there are so many people against us that we have to find ways.
We better find some points of agreement.
The common ground if we want to keep it. So
yeah.
So, is it beyond just the competition side, or
Well, there's a competition side to it. We all like to win, but now I believe everybody in the club would say the competition is the least of it. The evaluation is much more important to us. Mm-hmm. For instance, we had it's kind of a funny thing. I'll be judging the hog bay. Well, a dog will go in there and just maul, try to maul a hog and try to catch. Well, you can't do very good on points that way.
Right.
But that's a breeding approval and a pass for us.
So what? So what are you looking? I want to speak on one thing before something you just said before I ask you this next question. But one thing that I noticed while I was at the trials down here a couple weeks ago is everybody was supporting each other.
Yeah, that's the spirit of this club.
There was some dog work there that if I was a hardcore competitor, that I wouldn't have been satisfied with.
Yeah.
But what you saw was you didn't see anybody sitting back going, oh, good, so-and-so's dog did. I'm going to win. Yeah. They were like, hey, get your dog back up there and use the opportunity.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was really kind of a different vibe than what I'm used to.
New people have to be welcome because they're just hunters sometimes. And, there's sometimes what is their part in this club? Well, some of them will come to a few trials and just keep on hunting, But we still feel that we've identified sometimes really good dogs that we can use in what we're doing,
Yeah.
And we've made a point about, for instance, the PLL, the eye disease they have, and so somebody says, "Well, what do I do about that?" I said, "Here's a $40 test. You can," and so even hunters learn. Well, maybe I ought not breed a blind dog, and we think we've helped one another that way. That's part of that tools business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we want to evaluate them. Like Roach up here in northern Kentucky, he's dog of the year, and so automatically we think. We probably need to breed to that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've done, and that's what I've done anyway. And, I see him work. I see what kind of retriever he is. I see how he does in a tunnel. I see a lot of other things. And, at the Texas trials when we award the dog of the year, and he won the dog of the year. And then I followed that up with a litter of puppies, with that dog. And other people have too, and there's some good litters out there.
Yeah.
Which we never would have met Hannah. A friend of mine, Hannah wanted to buy a dog off me, and I said, my friend's got a dog, call him in Texas. He gave her the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And because she's a falconer, needed a dog, and he had a pup he could send, and she's done such a great job with it. Well, here she comes down to our first trial here. And, just falls right in, and, then now she's made every trial since then.
Yeah, yeah. When I was at the trial, I met people from Carolinas. I met people from Iowa. I met somebody from New Mexico that came out here.
Bork was there. Yeah.
Texas.
Right.
All over. I thought it was a great thing. So, let's talk about the versatility of the Jagdterrier.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the things that attracted me to the Jags, but I'm just going to let you take that away.
Well, they are a versatile breed. Now, by a versatile breed, we believe that, and of course they test in Germany in a versatile sense, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
That is, the dog has to go jump in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, has to go in a tunnel. Okay, well, that's two different things. and they're evaluated differently. That's natural abilities test. And then they have to do other things too. But we believe that what's been handed to us as a breed now, and by that I mean there's individuals in this breed that can do it all. But there are some super retrievers, and I'm talking about some super retrievers.
Mm-hmm.
Way up that list that might or might not be a ground dog.
Now, when you're talking super retrievers, you talking compete with Labradors on a 200-yard blind retrieve?
Josh Fleesick there, had a dog. Did you see Josh?
I don't think so.
You remember the real nice camper on the left?
Yes.
Okay, Josh Fleesick is from Minnesota, so he comes down.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 weeks before the trial, he was in he's got a dog. It's a grandson of my Az, and Az was, $150, $200 water retrieved into big water down here in the lake. Pretty good for a terrier.
Yeah.
I think, maybe not for a big lab. But he had such drive, too. He just to drive. Well, Josh takes this little dog and enters that gun dog thing and comes in 5th in the pro division and 6th in the puppy against, labs and big running labs,
mm-hmm.
high-dollar labs. And so, no, they can't all do that. But every once in a while, one shows up that can bump up into the lower levels of the better dogs. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I'm sure they're not going to be American champion.
Yeah.
But they're at the lower levels of some of the better labs in the country, I would say. I'd say that's a good way of putting them. But those are still pretty good dogs for a 16-pound, 20-pound dog. We think.
Right.
We think. It's the drive that's in them. They have such drive. I was talking to Christopher Murat yesterday, and Christopher has trained the most winning Boykin Spaniel, the highest winning Irish Water Spaniel in history, both of them.
Yeah.
And he's interested in these dogs. So we're talking about, well, what is it that, are these other drives related to that? So we think the incredible drives of the dog allows them to do all this other stuff. Can they blood trail? Yes, but it's related to that drive. Can they retrieve? Yes, but it's related to that drive. Can they bay a hawk? Yes. Can they hunt coon or even squirrels? We think that those drives the hunting drive, the prey drive, the play drive, we believe those are related. And in some of these dogs, they're absolutely extreme. Absolutely extreme. Now, you add to that every once in a while. So you got these dogs that are most of them are more or less search and destroy type dogs.
We're going to get there. I want to talk about that.
But some of them
part.
have a great tracking ability,
That's related to drive.
Yeah, we think so. We think so.
We've done a ton of hound podcasts with, I was a police canine trainer, and I've talked about that. I'm just kind of telling you that. And Heath Hyatt is a master trainer from Virginia and doing police dogs and homeland security dogs and all these different things. And we have tried to find that common thread between how can you take a dog that is not genetically bred for tracking, such as a Labrador Retriever. They're not but you can make them a tracking machine. It always bases on drive. All the selection for police dogs was based on drive. So when you start talking about cold nose versus hot nose versus all this other stuff that people try to put reasoning around it, they often miss what's inside the dog, the drive that it takes for them to do that. There's a reason why they detect that scent and then they want to take it and they want to catch it.
You have to, I think some people, they think that, for instance, a pointing dog is doing something different than a border collie, for instance. And actually, a dog is just a dog. Mm-hmm. And so a border collie who slips up on that and uses that strong eye is doing the exact same thing a pointer does. Mm-hmm. And that's nothing in the world but a wild dog creeping up on an animal and getting ready to, jump on it and kill it.
Right.
Well, that particular behavior, of course, through breeding and training is accentuated. And
they've learned to cap the drive.
Yeah. But like if the border collie won't chase a calf, they'll turn that border collie loose, and I think when they try them, it's got to chase a cow. Mm-hmm. If it won't do that, and those drives are just, if you ask me, they're just dog drives. So that means they're wild dog drives. Mm-hmm. So it's just the ability of a dog to want to chase something for prey or to play with it. And so it's really a basic thing. But now they have accentuated these and selected through that through the underground work, terriers in general, and these dogs and terriers in general.
I agree with you. Prey drive is a very ancient hereditary instinct in the canine.
Yeah.
What we have done through concentrated breeding is breed the trainability into them, we can cap the drive. We can actually put it to good use. We've harnessed the energy through genetics and breeding. So let's talk about the Jagdterrier and the absolute that drive. Because if you put out there, if you went to any hunting dog group and you said, "What do y'all think about Jagdterriers?" Man, you start getting all kinds of. They're crazy, they're suicidal. You can't control them. You can't, and then you get the other extreme of, hey, they're the best dogs I ever had. I love them.
Yeah, it's the Jagdterriers. I talked to Doug Turner the day before yesterday, and he's a lab guy, and he's talking about their dogs, and I was hooking him up with Christopher Murat, Christopher wants to train a high-level retriever, and so. Doug put it this way, and I said, I've never heard it put that way exactly. He said, not everybody likes these dogs. But he said, I've discovered that those that don't like them, he said, I don't like them. And so it's a certain temperament. I was trying to find a tree dog, a squirrel dog.
Yeah.
And I'd bred a litter. I had almost a world champion dog, I thought. I'd beat a world champion. And I bred to a world champion for sure, and one that had raised world champions. But Feist are crossbred. Mm-hmm. They're just no telling what. So I bred it and kept 8 puppies.
Don't tell Feist breeders that.
Oh, well. Now, the real American the American Feist Association, they'd ask them, they were pretty good people. You'd ask them the difference between a Feist and a cur.
Yeah.
They'd say, how far the dog runs a deer. That's the only difference. That's the only thing they'd say, because they knew they were crossbred.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, purebred dog. So I got a hold of Jim Glover. He said, oh, they're the most tree-minded dog ever was. Well, he hunted in a pecan orchard. That's not a test of tree ability.
Right.
Because they can see it at any time, a little low-spreading trees. And he kills.
Was he from Georgia?
He's from Pasadena, Texas.
Okay. Yeah.
And but they have the same thing as they have in Georgia.
Holy cow!
little-
Those pecan orchards down there, a squirrel can actually timber from tree to tree down those rows of trees when they're not pruned back. And when the leaves are off, it's like being in a city park.
Well, you don't need a tree dog to do that.
If you can't get a young dog started treeing and barking up in a pecan orchard,
that's right.
You got the wrong dog.
I've noticed these falconers do really well getting tree dogs together too, because you get a squirrel chased around the top of a tree by a hawk for 20 minutes, the dog's going crazy on the ground, and it soon learns something's up there.
Yeah.
And the squirrel hunters or the falconers, they almost always make a tree dog out of a dog.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah.
And but those extreme drives, Jay Wallab says they're good at this, they're good at this, they're good at this, they're good at this, but they're the best at getting killed because they can do things. Well, I had a friend that one chased a goose in water. That's all it did. But it drank so much water as it was trying to chase that goose, it died of water intoxication. It died by thinning its blood down. So, these are like, I had a friend that used to race. He'd work all week long on I think he had a Camaro. He'd go run it on Friday night. He'd run from the police, and he'd run here.
Yeah.
And, a hot rod car is a wonderful thing. And these little dogs are hot rods, some of them.
Right.
And some of them we're developing some dogs. There's a few lines that are coming up with a little bit of an off switch, quite a bit of an off switch. They sit there in the kennel and just look at you. But now some of them don't, so, but the problem with that hot rod car is it'll get you hurt or cause a wreck if you're not careful.
Right.
And, but there's nothing like one of those cars. You dream about them. You lay awake at night and dream about that 64 Camaro you had when you were a boy, and how fast it was. And these little dogs too, you lay sometimes it's nightmares, but you lay awake and dream about them, you think, man, look what that dog just did. There's a little red dog swam that big water down there in Tuscumbia, Alabama. There's a big river through there. And the hog hit the water, and the little Momo dog did too, and it swam that big water. I mean, it just doesn't happen. But they got to the other side. The hog was wore out and the dog was wore out. It took them 45 minutes to get around. They could hear it bark every once in a while, and they went over there and got their dog back.
Right.
But you can get in trouble with that too.
How do people get in trouble with it?
Well, the dogs can get themselves in trouble. Is what I mean. They get down the hole and don't want to come back out.
Well, let's talk about
and can hurt themselves that way, or just go hunting and never come back. I mean, Doug told me, I was telling him his dog was gone. I said, now don't give up for 7 days, 7 full days. The dog just ended up gone. He let it out, and it was just out running around, running rabbit. Well, it hit some kind of a track and disappeared. Fox track, something like that. 7 days later. These are hunting dogs.
Right.
They'll go hunting,
So how much responsibility falls on the hunter, though?
Oh, always a lot. You have to be, that's why that's why I never advertise. I never advertise a puppy. It's a crazy thing to do to advertise these dogs, because somebody will say, hey, I want one. And people need to I just let people self-select. They got to hunt me down, find out what I got, find out what these dogs are. And by the time they get to me, they don't ask me, well, have they had shots or have they been wormed? That kind of thing. Right. They know who I am. They know what these dogs are. They know what they're kind of halfway capable of. And, by then they've seen a few. And somebody's told them about William Burns or me or somebody else that does breeding, and then we can kind of fill them in now, because these dogs came over with a lot of dog aggression. They did, and I don't know if the Germans were that heavy-handed as trainers or the Serbians were that heavy-handed as trainers. But I mean, the Serbians would get on the Americans and say, you Americans, and the Germans would say, and I think, well, I've had dogs from Yugoslavia, the Czech Republic, Serbia, Croatia. I've seen dogs from Macedonia, the Ukraine, Slovakia, Slovenia, who knows, several more countries. And you better be careful.
Let's talk. Let's go there. Let's talk about that. Where these dogs came from.
Well,
we've never. We're kind of bouncing around a little bit, but I want to. We've got an idea here what we're dealing with. We're talking about Jagdterriers primarily.
Yes. Well, here's what a Jagdterrier is. Here's what a terrier is. In England in the late 1800s, any little dark-colored dog around the farmstead was a terrier. Mm-hmm. They all were. There were no Skye Terriers and Jack Russell Terrier in the mid to late 1800s. They're just all little dogs. You go to a dog show, there'd be 6 or 8 classes of dogs: terriers and hounds and a few more.
Right.
So, of course, every local little area started developing their little terrier. Skye Terrier, Patterdale Terrier a little later. Different Patterdale Terrier is more of a modern thing. So by the 20s, there was a black and tan terrier, there was a fox terrier, and there were a few more, border terriers maybe. Mm-hmm. And so in Germany, a man by the name of Lutz Heck was a Nazi government official and head of the zoos. And so they were all, they hunted. Ermann Göring had a hand in this. Ermann Göring, the head of the German Luftwaffe, was a big hunter. Mm-hmm. And so they came up with the idea of some breeding projects. One, they were going to breed back a cow back to the original Auroch, a horse back to an original European horse. And these terriers became a German terrier when a litter was born that was black and tan. Of course, they'd been dark before.
Yeah.
But fox terriers at that point were still hunting dogs, but they weren't black. Mm-hmm. So they had a litter of 4 born: Morla, Nigra, Werewolf, and Raugraf. 4 dogs. They were black and tan. And so all Jagdterriers usually go back to those 4 dogs.
Yeah.
They're black and tan. Zangenberg and Lackner were their brains behind it. They had 800 dogs in a state breeding project at one time.
No, say those names again. Those were the guys that were heading up the project.
Zangenberg and Lackner were the brains. Lutz Heck was the government. He was the Nazi government lackey.
And what year would this have been?
Well, they kind of finished their project and introduced these dogs to the public in 1927. It was in the middle between the wars as German nationalism was coming to the forefront after World War I. And it's all a German. The idea was anything German is better than anything else. And Germans still believe that. They do. And they've got some good points about most everything they do. And so then they did all that testing program. They imported a Welsh champion, a Welsh Terrier champion, which is still a black and tan terrier. Yeah. Right now, there's the Inisfer pack, and I don't know if that's in Wales or Scotland, but there's an old book from the 30s called Hunt and Working Terriers by Elder, I believe it is. And you look at those Inisfer fox terriers. Well, they're black and tan. They look just like Jagdterriers. They look just like them. So they share similar blood with all the fox terriers and Welsh terriers. They go right back to that. And so they were introduced in Germany in the 27. Of course, you can imagine what happened during the war. But they were still kept and held by hunters. Mm-hmm. As late as the early 90s, nobody had them but just old forestmeisters and hunters and Jägermeisters, huntmasters,
Early 90s, 1990s?
Yes. I would call Germany in the 90s, Sprechen Sie English? Click.
Yeah.
But then, by the time we started developing a little communication with internet and so forth, then, Katie barred the door. Mm-hmm. It became much more widespread in the other countries, in Europe. And, of course, we'd had dogs here since the 1948, 47, 48.
We had Yogs here.
Yes, Max Teal had come over with them. Okay. And, occasionally another one get it. He imported most of them. But there was an Abe, I forget his name, but he must have had some financial means. It looks like he'd brought several dogs over. Mm-hmm. And but it was through Max. Max was the brains behind that. I talked to Max. I was going to get a dog from him in the mid-90s. And but he died before it happened. He died before I got a dog from him.
So the foundation of this breed is the fox terrier.
It is they are fox terriers.
Yeah.
With a Welsh terrier, but at that point there was very little difference between a Welsh terrier and a fox terrier.
With a shot of nitrous oxide.
Well, a shot of Nazi.
Well, so as we got into the 1990s, you said a lot of these dogs were still over in Germany.
Yeah.
Or just a few here in the States. Tell us where they've come since the 1990s.
Well,
that's 32 years
in
ago.
the 90s, and even before that, they would test these dogs by putting them down a tunnel, and they would go back in a tunnel, and there would be a fox back in there or a badger. Mm-hmm. They just open the door. They just run through there and grab the fox or the badger. Well, we know, that's not something that's acceptable. Most people don't. I wouldn't really want my dogs. I mean, it's not a really want. I just don't want my dogs doing that, a badger, because a badger's going to do some real damage to a dog, and I'm not going to hunt badgers. But as animal rights laws changed, that stopped happening, and the versatile side seems to have expanded, and they have become better. They call them turfters back then. They just chase a wild boar. Let's go in there and find a wild boar and just chase it, and chase it to the gun. Well, in America, you can't just chase it to the gun. You've got to find it,
right,
and track it, and bay it.
Well, maybe we're not ready to go here. What did the original after 1927 and before Max Teal brought them here? What were they using these dogs for in the old country?
There's at Princeton University. I'd like to get up there. There's four picture albums, and they were gifts from Luke's Heck to Ermon Goring. And there's a picture that I saw of two Jagdterriers sitting on the back of this big German touring car hog hunting.
Really?
So they hog hunted. They turfed. That is, that they would chase the hogs through the woods, and somebody come by and they'd shoot the hog. Mm-hmm. And they still do that over there. But hunting situations have changed. You have to have a dog that can find an animal, locate it, track it, bay it. It's a little different animal now.
Yeah.
One of those search and destroy dogs would be fine, and so they've changed just a bit. But then they used them in the ground to hunt fox. Mm-hmm. And you'll see them in Spain now. Of course, the foxes and lambs, even in Spain, and you have to protect your lambs, and so they'll put them in big hay bales or in the ground, and out will run this red fox, and the farmer will shoot the red fox.
Looking for the bolt.
Yeah, and so that's they're used for that, and all over for foxes, all over for foxes. But then they use them to track wounded game. That's a big part of these dogs, to track wounded game.
Today.
Yes, in Europe and here. There's a lot of dogs. There's a book called Hunting Dogs, or Dogs for Finding Wounded Game, Tracking Dogs for Finding Wounded Deer, or something like that. Mm-hmm. John Giannini wrote the book. He's got a section on every dog. The lady whose dog was in that forever was Sage, the Jagdterrier representative, but now she's got a dog from me out of Az, my old Az dog. But, good trackers, lots of drive. Some are not very deliberate, but again, you have to have the kind of personality who can deal with a dog. Dennis Redden over here has one in western Kentucky. He's a great tracking dog, and a squirrel dog. I don't know how that's going to go together when he starts tracking deer and the squirrels start running across. But he's got a really good dog.
I think it's possible.
It is. A lot of times when you put that harness on, their mind changes.
Gear association is what that's called.
And you're just going to have enough reward at the end of that blood track.
Yep.
You're going to have enough reward. They're going to have to enjoy that as much as they do enjoying that squirrel.
That's right. Yeah, I've told this story before on the podcast, but when we would bring our dogs out, that dog, my working dog, basically had 3 jobs: people tracking, evidence collection, and contraband. Contraband indication. Detection work.
Yeah.
So, and each one of those jobs required a different piece of equipment that was key to getting that
dog in the right mindset.
Yep.
Absolutely.
When they felt the harness go on, they knew they weren't looking for guns. They knew that they were going to track.
Yeah.
It wouldn't say that they wouldn't stop and indicate on a gun.
Sure.
When
absolutely.
Going down the track, but their primary focus was boom right here.
I just read an article last week. They had found somebody. They went to the last. They had hunted with a shepherd and a Jagdterrier, and did time about, and they got to the end of it kind of, and they just didn't have any more dog. The dogs were just done, and so they, marked their spot. Somebody else came in, I think, through the night or early the next day, and they found that person within 150 yards.
Right.
But they're tracking people with a Jagdterrier,
I believe
it.
That was the number
they have
one
a good
thing.
nose.
That's what we tested for. We didn't care what breed it was.
Oh yeah.
We're looking for that drive. We're looking for that. And one thing that I noticed in my short Jagdterrier career so far, the pup that I got from you, that dude would chase a ball anywhere. If I could throw it under a building, I could throw it in the building, I could throw it, throw it behind the couch. I mean, his drive to find that was what was so amazing to me.
That was a good litter, I tell you. I still have one of those females to go to Derek up there in North Dakota. But
might try to talk you out of it here.
Yeah, well, just go to Derek. You have to talk to Derek. If Derek says yes, if you get on the phone and get him to say yes, you can have it. I'd be glad to get rid of it. I tell you, it barked all night at the house last night.
And I feel sick about losing mine because I feel responsible. I was the caretaker. I knew that dog had that.
They can move so quickly. They will get underneath those. They can get in themselves.
I ran over him in the driveway.
Yeah, I know. They can get underneath things so quickly.
I never even saw him.
Yeah.
So when I'm driving from the barn down to where my wife parks, I've got a building there. It's a summer kitchen is what it was. It's originally a blacksmith shop, but it's a summer kitchen. I do all my work out there for the podcast and different things like that. I didn't even notice the door was open. I'd lost track of Krieger. I actually assumed, which is always dangerous, that my wife had him in the house. And I'm going down through there, never saw him, felt it, and I was like, I know what that was.
Yeah.
And looked in the side view mirror.
It can happen. They're so fast. They're so and who knows why it dashed underneath the tires of your car. It might have been chasing the tire.
Yeah,
you just never know.
He had a car fetish.
Yeah, they love it. They love anything moving.
Yep. I had to really. I was actually working on him. I'd wait for the mail driver to come through every day, and I'd just sit there with him on a check cord. And just wait and just try to redirect that energy away from that.
My dog would try to jump out the front door. So I've spent I don't know how many times I'd go through the front door and come back, go through the front door and come back.
Yeah.
You can't, because, if he runs out that front door without a leash on, and then he sees something.
He's gone.
He's going to go hunting.
Yeah. So let's get back. Let's talk about the versatility and the use of what you're seeing in the Yogs today.
Well, there's a guy like William Burns in Texas there, close to the Dallas area. So he guided this last year with Rufus. Rufus, a great dog out of our club. And Rufus probably retrieved 725 quail,
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, is he taking that dog out and...
He's a guide.
But is he using it like as a sidekick?
Using it to flush and to retrieve.
So he's using it just like a flush dog and a retriever dog.
Yeah.
He can take Rufus, go out to quail country.
Take a pointer.
He takes a pointer too. Okay.
Yeah. And so he, and that's what Josh Fleachick's doing too, with that dog, the one that won that thing out there. He's using it as a flushing dog. Mm-hmm. Flushing dog and a retriever, And, that seems to be, Tyler Sladen, the same thing. He has pointers. And then he flushes either with a little spaniel or with a Jagdterrier and has a hawk. So the bird dog might point 800 yards from him.
Yeah.
And so they go and go to it, flush it up, the bird flies it down.
So he's a
He's a flusher, but not a retriever.
Yeah. Okay.
No, not with a bird. I mean, he's a good little retriever.
Yeah.
But now you don't. When you have a bird, you don't retrieve, of course.
He's a falconer.
Yes, he is.
Okay,
but he hunts a lot of ways too. He also
Gotcha.
hunts. He also hunts with a gun. You know, and when he does that, he flushes with it.
He probably doesn't take the hawk when he's got the gun.
No. The old timers around here, quail hunters around here, old timers with a gun. They ooh boy, they don't like.
Yeah.
I love a hawk. I love watch that falconry. That's just wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
These dogs, Goran Kanatic he had a lot of dogs that ended up in the States. He was in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and he was a falconer. He had an old dog named Boris. He kept till it was at least 13 or 14 years old. Really good blood, and he did falconry work with that dog.
So with anything, we've already talked about the drama that people can bring. Are you worried about the breed of dogs becoming too popular, attracting the wrong people? How do you control that part of your mission statement for the hunting versatility of the dog?
Well,
how do you guard against
that?
How do you guard against them from becoming a house dog, lap dog?
Well,
some of the things we've seen with some of the other great hunting breeds.
There's a dog. There's a book called "This Is the Dachshund," 1961 version, and it's talking about what was happening with the dachshund being hunting dogs and going into show dogs or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he said, you can't control the people. As long as there's people, you can't control that. What's going to ruin a dog is when there's no longer any work to do. Mm-hmm. As long as there's work to do for a dachshund, a working dachshund, then, there would be somebody using them for the right thing.
Yeah.
And they would develop and they would still be hunting dogs. Mm-hmm. And so, like for instance, the Airedale. And there's still probably some pretty good Airedales around. But at one time, they were mountain lion dogs and bear dogs.
Right.
But the work for them to do was kind of replaced by hounds and other dogs. Mm-hmm. And so they, and these little dogs, as long as you can use them to find vermin, mm-hmm. Critters, they're going to maintain, I think, that some way or another, that drive, because there'll be somebody who's working those dogs that way. And but at the same time, there's going to be people from the UK, AKC. I mean, I get calls all the time. I need one that's, looks like this dog. Well, he's got a picture of Rex of Best. Rex of Best won 140 some odd exhibitions in Europe. There aren't a handful of dogs that look like that. So I knew what they wanted. They wanted a show dog.
Right.
And call Nenad. There's a lady called Nenad over there. She has Von Kleinem Fluss. And they're beautiful dogs. Uh-huh. They're beautiful dogs. And they actually hunt hogs, too. But they're not something I want. I want a little different dog than they have. And I even told my buddy Jay Wallab in Lamarck, Texas, what, I'm going to have to try one of those. just because they are such good looking. But if somebody called and they wanted AKC registered, which doesn't exist, and they want it to be so-and-so, highly angulated and so forth, mm-hmm. animated. So they're wanting a show dog. And right. So, most of us won't sell to people like that, but people like that are going to get dogs. And there's nothing you can do to control them. There's going to be people with big setters and that big flowing coat. But there's people like Tyler Sladen that's taking Kira, his dog, out there in the desert, mm-hmm. and finding them Montezuma quail and them scale quail and taking them to Wyoming and finding whatever they find up there.
Yeah.
So as long as there's work to do and hunting to be done, these dogs, there'll be some hunting dogs that are Jagdterriers. And we hope that those will be dogs that are in our club.
Okay. So you mentioned something there about AKC. Obviously, AKC does not recognize the Jagdterrier.
They're in the way they go through a process is,
but currently they don't.
They start with a thing called Foundation Stock Service, mm-hmm. and so it's kind of an open book at that point, and they allow the entry of some dogs. And at one point they'll kind of close all that up. They have to have a parent club before they ever actually can be full representation. We don't know that we want to be that club.
Right.
One of those Jack Russell Terrier Club, it's split right down the middle. And one went with the AKC and one went over here. And I think it's the Jack Russell Terrier Club of America that is separate from the AKC.
You can say the same thing about a black and tan coonhound.
Yeah.
The original AKC,
right.
Black and tan coonhound, long-eared, sloppy, and then you've got the hunting
UKC type dog.
UKC hunting black and tan.
As long as there's a hunting registry, I think there'll be some hunting dogs like mm-hmm. this, including terriers.
Yeah.
And I mean the Jack Russell people, there's a lot of play events, and we enjoy those play events too, We do a little lure course every once in a while, things like that, but we want to know if they'll track and tree. They have to pass our breeding approval program, they have to find game. The American Tree and Feats Association was, you had to take it and find a squirrel.
Right.
If it could find a squirrel,
mm-hmm.
At least you got a squirrel dog.
Well, when the books were still open on some of the other coonhound breeds, I remember I got an English hound single registered at one time, and one of the qualifications was they had to go tree a raccoon.
Yeah.
There had to be some hunting ability there.
Sure.
It wasn't just like, hey, you got a speckled dog. It looks like an English dog. Sure, we'll take your money. You had to meet certain criteria through performance.
Now, our dogs, like for instance, they have to find game, but it doesn't matter what game they find. They can go flush quail.
Yeah.
They can flush, they can find a raccoon, they can track a deer.
Yeah.
They can go find a hog. They can find a possum or even an armadillo.
Currently, is there any record keeping on these bloodlines? Because you've got them up here.
We have a registry in our club. We have 1,800 dogs in our club. Mm-hmm. And see, a lot of these dogs come over with papers, maybe an export pedigree, and nobody cares to get them registered with the UKC. And then a couple generations later, you're in trouble. And but we update, we keep it all updated. We have 1,800 dogs in the registry. We have it online. So we have pretty good records of it so far. And then, of course, there's another registry called the German Jagdterrier Registry. Sharon Jones out there.
Oh, okay.
Jack and Sharon Jones in Tunis, Missouri, something like that. They keep, but now their dogs from their pedigrees, they're coming down from Max Teal's dogs mostly, and they're adding a few dogs in that, but not a lot. And so they have basically the same dogs once you get past a certain level.
Describe, you've touched on it a couple times. You talked about the show dog from Germany that they hunted hogs with, and you said that wasn't their style of dog.
Yeah.
Your style of dog.
Yeah.
Tell me as the president of this organization, somebody that came to me, you came to me, referred to me as the person to talk to about Jagdterriers. What kind of dog does James Mills want to keep?
Well, I look at FCI 103 as a standard. It describes a dog. Now, I want a dog.
What's FCI 103? What is
it? It is the standard that describes the international. FCI is Fédération Cynologique Internationale. It is the worldwide dog registry.
I'm learning stuff.
Yeah,
here.
It's FCI. All the European dogs are FCI registered dogs. Almost all those clubs are recognized by the FCI. Well, they all go by the same standard. They make their little tweaks too. But now here's the problem with a show dog. Mm-hmm. It's like with show cattle. There's a standard to describe it, but people like an extreme dog. Mm-hmm. They want a dog at the top of that standard with angulation that's exaggerated. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want that. I want a dog that's in the middle. I want a dog 15 inches tall. I want a nice head on the dog if it's a male, but I don't want it exaggerated. I need bone, but I don't want it too much. I want angulation, but I don't want it over-angulated. I just want the dog that's being described, and I want the one that's at the top of that bell curve. That's the common dog. That is the dog that it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Now, I have some dogs that are toward the bottom of the size standard, and I have had dogs at the top. Jason Schweitzer. We use dogs at the but the only tweak we made as at our club was to change the fault of oversize and undersize from a disqualifying fault to just a plain fault. Mm-hmm. In other words, we believe that these dogs should be in this range, but there's some people that need a little bigger dog, they think.
Yeah.
And if you dig in the ground, you need a little smaller dog.
Right.
And so we breed, I want my dogs to be from 13 to 16 inches tall, and if it's right in the middle, I'm just happy.
Right.
And so if I need a dog for in the water, in rough water, I'm probably wanting a little bigger dog in that. And, but if I'm in the ground, I want one down to the bottom of that, 13 inches, and it maybe even less.
What is the breed standard for male?
13. Well, it's 33 centimeters to 40 centimeters, which is roughly 16 inches down to 13 inches. Mm-hmm. Rough figures on the top, almost exactly on the bottom, 13 inches. So, but if you breed a 13-inch dog,
male and female.
Yes, but if you breed a 13-inch dog, and they has a size standard, but those are basically meaningless. The weight.
I was going to go with weight.
The weight, they say like 22 to 24, maybe even less. But weight is so variable from dog to dog. Mm-hmm. When JoJo showed up at my house, he weighed 14 pounds, But he could easily weigh 17 pounds, if there's a little weight on him. And so, there's dogs up around 30 But I tell you, every once in a while, we bred a 30-pound dog to a 30-pound dog. My as to another female that was right at the same height. And there's a dog out of that in heavy weight weighed 55 pounds. So there's still some genetic pliability on the upper end anyway.
Yeah.
And we don't want to breed dogs that big in our club.
Right.
But now somebody probably has dogs and they think they need a dog that big. We don't think, most of the club doesn't think we need a dog that big.
I don't think the world's safe with a 55-pound Yog running around.
This Jagdterrier was in my yard, and if I didn't know better that I had bred the dog in my backyard, I would have swore that was about a half lab because he was big as a lab. You know, and I've known a lot of labs that didn't weigh 55 pounds.
He could extirpate whole species of animals from a region.
Yeah, he had a big old head, and he's up there at Sean O'Neill's now. No telling what he's going to get into up there. But now I have a friend that's going to use him for bear hunting and hog hunting down here. Going to breed to him probably. And you know, but now Little Digger, he was right in the middle of that standard. Mm-hmm. He was just perfect, you know, size dog, looking, you know, just exactly what I'd want.
Yeah.
Had a head just right. Bone was medium, which made him quick. You know, if he's really, really heavy boned, he won't be as quick. If he's light boned, he won't be as sturdy. Mm-hmm. So we want him quick and sturdy, and could run all day. You know, 7-8 hours on a bear.
Right.
He caught 200 bear. You know, and there's a lot of hounds that haven't caught 200 bear. You know, he caught 200 bear.
Right.
And Mr. Jimmy Gibbs is in Coos Bay, Oregon. He had Digger, and he has, and that's the kind of dog he's going to run. He's going to run a dog that'll run a bear down, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Are they pretty hardy? Are they pretty hardy, pretty healthy?
They are healthy dogs. The only thing genetically is one little eye thing. Every once in a while, you'll hear a little bit about a heart murmur.
Uh-huh.
And some of Max Teal's dogs are early on because, well, to be honest, there weren't very many of them, and then they crossbred, and then they back. If you look at those pedigrees out of Max's stuff, you know, you see these four dogs, these four, you know, all the way back here in 7th generation, they're all same dogs, you know. And so you could see where a heart murmur might be. So there's that. But that's only two things. You see, they're very hardy. I had one die in my arms at 15, had one die at 13. If they don't get in trouble health-wise and make it to about 8 or 9, where they get halfway semi-retired, they might live to 15.
Right.
But this eye thing in Germany, they used it a lot in the ground a lot back then. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that's dangerous work in the ground on a badger or a fox. That's dangerous stuff. So they were losing dogs at 5 and 6 and 4 and 5. And, well, you know, that eye thing doesn't show up till about 5 or 6.
Right.
So, you know, then once they got away from that kind of work and they started living a little longer.
What's the eye thing?
Primary lens luxation. It's just a simple little test, $40. There's a recessive and a mutated gene which is recessive. And so if you test your dogs, the international regulations are be sure one of your dogs is clear. So for a $40 test, you'll make sure you never breed a dog that will go blind from primary lens luxation. The lens twists sideways and they lose the eye. Mm-hmm. You know, and some people still aren't paying attention to it. And, you know, I had a guy call me and it cost him $2,000 to have that eye taken out there in California. Then the other one went out. And so he lost, you know, the dog was completely blind.
Right.
And so for $40, that breeder could have said, well, hey, these are both carriers. Maybe I'll breed to another dog, you know.
Say what it's called again.
Primary lens luxation, PLL. Real common in terriers, bull terriers. It's very prevalent. I don't know what the percentage is in Jagdterriers. I've tested 48 dogs, and I've had about 3 or 4 carriers, you know, over the years.
So if they've got that gene,
you don't breed it to another dog that's got it. Yeah.
Would you breed it at all?
Oh, yeah. FCI says you'll get in trouble reducing your genetics. You breed it. You know, there's nothing wrong with breeding it. But in our club, you can breed it. And in any club, German club, any of the clubs, you can breed it. But you can't breed it to another dog with that gene.
Okay.
You know. And so, you know, you always want your stud dogs to be clear, you know. And usually I just, rather than get in trouble, as puppies, I send them in. And before I ever get emotionally committed, I try to figure out which ones are clear. You know, for $40.
Yeah.
You know.
Why not?
Well, yeah.
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 One thing I saw while I was at the trials, and it's the American Hunting Terrier Association Jagdterrier chapter.
Yeah, the Jagdterrier Breed Club, right?
Right, Jagdterrier Breed Club. Is there a are you guys operating under American Hunting Terrier Association?
That's just the name of our one club. It's just dash. It's also known as the Jagdterrier Breed Club.
Okay. One thing I saw while I was at the trials was the inclusiveness. I saw Patterdales. I saw Dachshunds there. I saw Borders.
Some of our trials we open up like that. Now, our national trial down there where the national championship is, we don't really have time for that. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of people have more than one dog.
And that's going to be in Tyler, Texas?
Tyler, Texas in October.
Right.
12th, 13th, 14th, I think. Hog Bay National Championship.
Right.
And so, but, hunting terriers are hunting terriers, and it's the same mindset. Lynn McPherson comes out of Senatobia, Mississippi. She's got the same mind. Well, she actually has a Jagdterrier, but she's rescuing it, trying to find a home for it. We may have found a home yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, and a good Patterdale and a good Jack Russell, there's a lot of the same mentality, Mm-hmm. And had two guys there from England, and they had had a lot of Lakelands is what they had in England, Johnny Broadhurst, he's written a book, Terriers and Terrier Men 1 and 2, great books on terriers. And he's got a Jagdterrier, but he's got a border section, Airedale section, just everything. And there's a lot of the same thing, they have a lot of the same concerns.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to John here in the near future about the traditional uses of the terrier in England.
Oh, he's great.
And let him cover that part. As we wrap this thing up, how do we keep the hunting traits in these dogs, not allow them to become a fad breed or something like that? When I called you and I talked to David and I've talked to a few other people, I almost felt like, why do you want one? My first reaction was, I've always wanted one. I've always wanted one. Well, that's not the reason.
Why is it your business?
And now that I've gotten more into it and done more research, I'm starting to question whether I really need one or not.
Yeah.
Whether I really should have one. Digging a Jagdterrier out of a creek bank at 3 a.m.
David dug one out for 9 hours.
I know.
On a porcupine.
Yes.
On a porcupine.
So you have to do all the work, dig them out, and then you got to pull quills.
Yeah.
Bang. That sounds like a lot of fun.
That's not. I bet that I've never had the porcupine thing, but now like Jake Babb down there in Ozona, Texas.
Yeah.
Man alive, I reckon there's everywhere. He sends pictures regularly with just a big face full of quills. It's just, whew.
Yeah.
That's not something I'd enjoy.
Well,
but I don't know. It's just something they don't. You would think that you could break them from it, but
right.
You can't. It appears.
We just interviewed Nate Valley. He has Jack Russells, and it's almost like a badge of honor for a guy when he's standing neck deep in a hole that he's dug. It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I want to cover for people that might listen to this and say, man, those are cool little dogs. I've always wanted one. There's a hook.
Yeah.
There's a hook here. And what would that hook be for?
Well, the first question there was about how do you maintain them. The maintaining them is you have to hunt them. They have to be hunted. Mm-hmm. As long as, like I said, once the work is no longer there, these dogs will cease to be hunting dogs. They'll just be like they show at the AKC, and they'll go through the spiel and they'll talk about them, but it's meaningless to the animal.
The Cocker Spaniel was an upland game dog developed, and now they're not. Finding a working Cocker Spaniel is like.
Well, I tell you, there's some little Scottish working Cockers out there.
There still are, but
they're
I'm saying
crazy. Tyler's got one. Hannah's got one. Tyler
knowing where to get them.
Yeah, and so as long as there's work, it will do that. And the kicker is, I just ask I always ask, what are you going to do with it?
Right.
And if they're going to do something with it, I'm not too particular. I know if I have a friend, well, I don't know if he's a friend, but anyway, he's a Jagdterrier guy. And he put on this big spiel about if you want a blood tracking dog, you don't want these dogs. Well, that's what they're very useful for that, and they're known for that, and they're bred and tested for that. And if a fellow's going to make a blood tracking dog out of it, if he's pretty serious about it, you know, I'm all for helping him. You know, Dennis Redden over here, I got him one, just a little too wild a dog. His dog was just a great hunting dog. So I took him down there to Will Sims, and he's using him now. You know, they're killing just all kinds of critters and going to and hog hunting him too. But there's got to be some kind of work. And Dennis has got another dog out of a dog named Zepp now. Looks like it's going to be a great tracking dog. A great tracking dog. So as long as there's work, and, you know, that's what I say. Are you going to work the dog? You know, are you going to do something with this dog? And I've been fooled a few times. You know, people kind of know what to say sometimes, you know. And I think they maybe had a bad here. And all they really want to do is raise puppies, you know, and you still see that. And so, and which is, you know, I'm not going to.
Well, I'm hoping to get one so that I can breed it to my daughter's poodle and make Jagdterriers.
Jagdterriers, that'd be interesting. They would eat every Shih Tzu in the country, you know, wouldn't they? Not really. I know. I'll tell you, some of these falconers are breeding them to beagles, and making pretty neat little working dogs with them. Breeding them to beagles, and the guy down there in a friend of mine, he got a dog from me named Combat, and had a great little Jagdterrier. He's just a great hunting dog. Well, he had another Jagdterrier, and it was an older dog, and he bred it to a leopard hound, a black and tan leopard hound.
Yeah.
So you'd look at that litter, and half of them look real houndy, half of them look real much like a terrier. So it came back up here, and he said, "Would you let me breed to your Zepp dog?" And I'd already known what was happening with those dogs. They was treeing bear and treeing mountain lion, or not mountain lions, but treeing bear and hunting hogs and doing great. And I said, well, yeah. And so I let him crossbreed the dog, you know. And but that's for hunting dogs, you know. And who knows what he's doing down there? It might be another breed. I tell you, he's doing a great job down there. He just really
I'm all for it. As long as you're not trying to bring him back and saying these are Jagdterriers or these are...
right, yeah. There's no doubt a few lines that have a little something in the mix, you know. And there's one particular line that got a little something in the mix because when you line breed on it, you get something that doesn't look like a Jagdterrier, you know. And... but that being said, a dog I know out of that line who didn't look a lot like a Jagdterrier is probably the finest hog dog. I remember sitting in my chair one Sunday morning getting ready for church, and blink, a picture comes through the messenger, and he caught a boar hog. I said, "Oh, Otto caught a boar hog."
Yeah.
And then here comes another. He caught 7 boar hogs that morning. Didn't catch 7 hogs. Caught 7 boar hogs that morning.
Yeah.
With that dog. And it was a Jagdterrier for sure. It might have had a little something in the mix, you know. Who knows? Yeah. These dogs are not purebred.
Right.
They're Welsh Terriers, Fox Terriers, something, you know, and I just don't want to be lied to about it.
Exactly.
I don't want somebody to say, well, you know, they actually have opened up some of these German Longhairs with some Münsterlander breeding. And the old purists say, oh, no, we can't do that with they're about the same genetics.
Right.
They don't use those, you know, and that's the only way really in a scientific to keep your dogs from getting in trouble, you know. And I don't know what you'd cross a Jagdterrier
I don't either.
to help it. I think, but I'm glad that everybody's wanting to breed to one.
Yeah,
it tells me these dogs have something. I need that in my hog dog. I know a guy's got a bird dog. Took it to a bird dog trial. He crossed it on a bird dog. And he took it to a bird dog trial and won the bird dog trial.
Yeah.
You know, but just a little bit more dry, but it would point, you know.
Super versatile dogs. I knew that when I got mine, just as when I picked him up and was around him, and didn't take me a day, I knew I was dealing with something different from anything that I've ever had before.
Yeah.
But I also knew that there were ways to cap the drive and do things like that. I was actually working on a YouTube series on crossing over from some police dog training techniques that we use to. I mean, if you can cap the drive in a Belgian Malinois,
sure,
you can do it with the Jagd.
I tell you, I had a Dutch Shepherd once. A fellow just insisted on giving me a Dutch Shepherd, and I gave it to Jesse Fulton just right down the road here. I didn't have any, but I said, Why, yeah, this is a Jagdterrier about, waist, about
Yeah.
thigh high,
Yeah.
but it wasn't something I was interested in. If I do something with a dog, it's going to be a little black and tan or a red and tan Jagdterrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, James, you got anything else you want to add to the mix here?
No, not really. But if anybody's interested in the dogs, the way to be a member, you have to come to a trial. And so, we got to kind of see you face to face, and that's the only way you can be a member of our club. And so we have the trial there in Groton, South Dakota. It's all on the Facebook page. And then I think we have fairly well up to date. We're not as good on the communication side as we could be, but we got a big Facebook presence too. There's a big kind of a teaser club. It's the American Hunting Terrier Association page. It's got thousands and thousands of members, but most people, thousands and thousands of people on that page, but very few of them are members.
Right.
There's a lot of, that typical dog talk and know-it-all dog talk and drama that goes on there. People on there trying to sell puppies and,
Sure.
but there's some good information on there for the most part.
That's how.
And usually you can make contact with one of the members, and they're getting spread out. Joey Wright down there in Alabama. We were going to hold a trial down there. We may yet hold one down there in Alabama or Georgia, and then of course one here. And a fellow in Ohio wanted to do something. We you need a little nucleus of people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on the Houndsman XP podcast.
And good deal. I was glad to do it.
What a lot of information you gave us. Great information.
It's just kind of it's accumulated over 28 years of having these little dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
It just kind of spills out sometimes. Most people don't want to hear it, but
understood. Yeah, I think our audience all wants to hear it.
Yeah, I hope so. If they like hunting dogs and they've ever seen one there. These little devils, Cody Fritz there, the one that I told you that helped us start, that actually wanted to see something put together. I was at a hog bay, a field trial, a trial in Corinth, Mississippi. Corinth, is that right? Yeah, Corinth, Mississippi. And I had my little devil dog there. Never seen a hog. Well, it won the puppy class. Never seen a hog in his life. And a fellow I was with, I didn't even know I'd won it. He said, you've got this class 1. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you've got this class 1. So anyway, they called it back, and it was a tie for so many places. And so my little dog ran, and he said, you've won it. And I said, okay. I didn't even know what the criteria was.
Right.
Well, Cody was there and saw that little red dog, and he went back and found one. And then, that kind of helped everything. Paul Greenwood, his father-in-law, and of course Paul, he's just gold. He's just human gold.
I was looking at his horns that he had up at the trial.
American Dog Horn Association, but he is just human. He's just one of the best people.
Yeah.
And I just love Paul Greenwood. When I go down there, a lot of times I stay in his home, but we use his facility, and it's just great.
I'll be down there in October.
Oh, I hope you get to come.
I'll be down there.
Sure. Watching them bay of hogs, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a hog bay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, great. Well, you know what it's all about then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a plot guy, so.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever go to the one at Hickory Crossing, the plot?
Hickory Hill in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I was there the last year that they had the real hog bays before they started putting the restrictions in, and then been to the
or the real bear bay before they started putting the restrictions in. Is that what you mean?
Both.
Yeah, the bear. Yeah, they had a bear. Now it's a machine, bear.
Right.
Which, I mean, gosh, how could you have a bear? But they did,
Yep. Well, James, I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you.
All right. Well, until next time, you follow your hounds and I'll follow mine. Or your terrier.
Yeah, I'll be following terriers.
Hang on, folks. Don't touch that dial. We are going to dive into part 2 with Calvin Redhouse, and we're going to talk about the amazing video footage that he took, the number of hits this crazy feat has generated on Facebook for him. Here it is. All right, so I got the infamous, notorious, and one and only Calvin Redhouse on the podcast. And Calvin, you're going to tell an amazing story about catching. Well, I'm going to let you tell a story. How's everything on the Navajo Nation?
Oh, everything's quiet. Masks are still mandatory, but other than that, it's pretty much life. Life's almost back to normal here.
You've been hunting a bunch. I know you've been out. I've been seeing your resurgence on social media, on
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of took a break for a little bit, taking care of the family, just taking some downtime and letting the dogs recover, rest. So, spring bear started a week ago, and we've been hitting it hard.
So you've been bear hunting.
Yeah, bear hunting just opened, like I said, a week ago, and then mountain lion season still in season until the end of June. So,
Oh, I didn't realize they were coinciding and overlapping there. So yeah, cool, man. Well, hey, tell me about this thing you did this week. You did something that I don't think I've never seen it, and I know I've never even heard of it. But you caught a bear and a lion in the same tree.
yeah, to be honest with you, it was a. I told my wife I was going out that morning, and I didn't even bother to set an alarm, and she pushed me out of bed and said, "Hey, your alarm's about to go off." And this was at 5 a.m. and I didn't even set an alarm, so I was hesitant to go out. Five to laid in bed until about 5:30. Finally got up and loaded up the dogs, and I didn't leave the house until about close to 6. And it was just to exercise the dogs. That was it. Nothing really, nothing special. No clients, just me and the dogs doing what we do on a daily basis. So we went to the unit one, the one that we hunted in when you guys were out here. But instead of
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
instead of the base of the mountain, I was up on top, and I made a big old huge loop, just rode in the dogs. I was like, you know what, they need exercise, and um, six finished dogs and four pups that are less than a year and a half. So I said, you know what, these pups need to learn. So I kicked them all out of the dog box and just rode at them.
You always kick everything out of the dog box anyway.
They got to learn somehow. So so that's what I did, and I just rode at them. And of course, pups being pups, a couple of them trashed on deer for me a couple of times, and toned them off of it, and they were learning, and I rode at them for, I don't know, I'd say about, I think, right around 5.5 miles. And I was just about ready to give up because it started to get hot right now. And it was right around maybe 65 degrees, close to 70 degrees. And the dogs were starting to pant. And so I was like, you know what, maybe it's about time to get going. And I was like, I'll just rode them for about another mile, and then I'll throw them in the box and I'll head home. We came out of this draw and came up to the top, and they started opening, and I stopped, and half of them went to the right and the other half went to the left of the road. The ones that went to the right of the road went about maybe 3/4 of a mile and went off the side of the mountain. The other half kind of zigzagged back and forth on the road. And every time they crossed the road, I was trying to get to there, and I was looking for tracks, and I just kept on seeing dog tracks and dog tracks, and they just, that's all it was for about maybe a mile. That's all they did. It was zigzag back across the road, back and forth, and never could figure out what it was they were chasing. And so finally they just stopped, came to a dead stop in this big wide open, and they just turned around and came right back. And right where the other dogs went to the right, they took that track again. By that time, the first set of dogs, the first half that originally went right, had already been treed 500 yards away from the road. So found an old 2-track logging road, and that got me within 300 yards of the tree. So
that's close for you.
Yeah. And the best part about it was, it was all level ground. It was just right off the edge of the mountain before, it started to get real steep. They were just right there. So I just walked up, got camera gear, got some stuff, and having to walk up. I originally came crest over the top of the hill, and there was a ponderosa pine tree that was sticking up from the bottom. And I looked over and I saw the bear, and I was like, oh, all right, cool. They're right there. Okay, I see the bear. So I backed off of the top and went down and around because there was a low ledge. There was I don't know, I'll probably say about an 8-foot ledge that I couldn't get down. So I went backtracked a little bit and found a way down and around it. And as I started coming up to the tree, there was this big old boulder that was stood between myself and the tree. Just right over the top of that, I could see over the top of the boulder, I could see the bear. And
Yeah.
so, nonchalant, like, that bear's not going nowhere. Kept on walking, making all kinds of noise. Just as I came around the top of that boulder, I seen the mountain lion, and I just hurry up, duck down behind that
No
boulder. I
kidding.
was like, oh, if he sees me, there's a good chance he's gonna jump. So
Yeah.
I ducked back
Yeah.
behind that boulder. I took out camera gear. I took out my phones. I took out everything I needed. I was like, I need to get this before this cat jumps.
No
And
kidding, man.
I'm not gonna lie, my hands were shaking a little bit because I was so excited, all the adrenaline coming that was going through my body, and I just couldn't believe it. I had to take like 2 or 3 pauses, looked and looked, and I was like, "Am I seeing what am I seeing?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's right. It's a mountain lion and a bear
And a
and a
bear.
bear." And I was just like, "Oh man."
And they weren't 4 feet apart in that tree.
No, that the dogs were probably about maybe 8 foot off the ground from the dogs were about 8 foot below the cat. The bear was
Right.
about maybe a foot and a half above the mountain lion, around the next limb up. And it was just exciting, man. And I stayed, and to my surprise, I sat there for about maybe 20, 25 minutes, just watching at all.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I finally, after about maybe a good 10 minutes of sitting there and watching them myself, I was like, hey, let me see if I got signal. I took out my phone. I was like, oh, I can go Facebook Live. I got 1 bar LTE. So I was like, let's do this. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
would be interested to see this. I know that like took me 10 minutes to realize what I was actually seeing. So I don't know.
Calvin, the whole world is interested in what you accomplished. I'm telling you. The whole hunting world is. When I saw the live, I was like, you got to be kidding. I even stopped it and looked at it and make sure you weren't, because you're pretty slick on video stuff. And I was thinking he's photoshopped, he's used Lightroom and put it. No, but it was the whole deal, man. So tell me, did you ever see a track or anything? Did you have? It was a total surprise to you.
No, like I tried ever since they crossed the road back and forth, and then even the dogs that took the right track the first time, I could not cut a single track. The ground was dry, like the dogs would be running, and there would just be a dust trail right behind them, and they're just walking, and I couldn't for the life of me cut a single track. So I didn't know what to expect. So that's why I said when I came across the top, I saw the bear. And I was like, all right, well, just another normal day. Bear, and came over the top of that
Right.
boulder, and there was the lion. So
Did you? How do you think it happened? I mean, that is so unusual that. I mean, that just never that doesn't happen. How do you think it happened?
well, I was shocked. I was trying to figure it out too, and I got a little bit closer to the base of the tree, and the mountain lion has got some. His entire snout is covered with dry blood and fresh blood. And then I looked up at the bear, and the bear's the exact same way. So uh, I'm gonna assume that the dogs jumped them right off of the kill, and the kill's right around there somewhere. And
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you looked around for a kill.
no, I didn't. I didn't want to disturb the kill and put my scent all over it. I mean, who
Uh
knows
huh.
how long those animals been trying to hunt that animal for? So I didn't want to
Right.
disturb it. I just wanted to, leave them be. I already picked on them enough. So,
Yeah.
so I'm assuming the bear went up the tree first, and then the cat stayed there as long as he could, and then finally went up the tree after the dogs got close. I'm assuming. But I didn't bother looking for a kill, but my educated guess is the dogs jumped them off of a fresh kill that they were both sitting on. And from what I seen on, National Geographics and all this other stuff, the only time predators come together and eat is if there's enough food to go around for them not to fight over.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I can think of is maybe uh livestock.
The line.
Maybe it's a livestock, maybe a cow or a horse that they probably could have taken down. That's the only thing that I can think of that's big enough to feed a mountain lion and a bear at the same time for them to kind of get along and put their differences aside. And enjoy their dinner. So
yeah, you take that leg, you can have this side, and I'll take this side, and we'll come together for this meal. I don't think they were probably up there splitting a jackrabbit or
no, yeah,
something, you know,
yeah. So
or an elk calf, or because you've got all kinds of stuff on that mountain. You've got elk, you got mule deer, you got there's plenty of stuff up there. They have you seen cattle and stuff up on that mountain
yeah,
too?
there's quite a bit of cattle up there. Being spring and a lot of the snow has melted. The livestock around here is all open. The entire reservation is open range. So when snow
Yeah,
starts to melt off the top of the mountain, livestock already are trained to start making their way up. So there's newborn calves that are running around, newborn colts that are all over the place, and so that's just my assumptions that it had to have been like a big animal. Elk, yeah, it could have been an elk. There is elk in that part of
yeah.
that unit. So, and yeah, I stayed there for about, I don't know, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and that bear just didn't care. It lay down and at one point was actually had his eyes closed, taking a nap. And
Yeah.
the lion was, upset. He was trapped between, a rock and a hard place, I guess you could say. So that the lion was moving around the entire time, and then finally, I think the bear got restless. He stood up and he started, kind of pawing down at the mountain lion, and the mountain lion got really upset. He didn't like it one bit.
Right.
And that was it. That was the last straw when that bear was trying to, that bear went from the edge of the limb closer to the tree trunk. And when that happened, that lion was, nope, I'm out of here. He looked down, assessed the situation, and then he started looking for where to jump. And that was it. That cat took off. And of course the dogs left me underneath the tree with that bear. And I was like, yep, I think it's about time to go. So I,
Yeah. Was it a mature bear and a mature lion, or
no,
did they seem like they were
they were
young?
both young. The lion was
Mm,
probably a 2 year old, maybe even less. Maybe one that I would assume that he just got kicked free from the mother. To be honest with you, because he still had
yeah.
quite a bit of spots on the rear end that you could still see. And then the
Uh-huh.
bear was young. His ears were pretty close together. He looked like a big bear. They look like big animals in the picture that I took, but they were both young, and that was just because they were sitting so close in the size comparisons between a bear and a mountain lion. They made each other actually look kind of big, but up close and personal, yeah, they were both young. And even if I had a shooter or a hunter, I still would advise them, this is not one you want to take. This is not going to make you,
Right.
it's not going to, yeah, it'll fill your tag, but it's not going to be one that you want to, show to the world and praise and brag and talk about. So
Yeah, it's not even good management practices at that part to
yes,
take animals
not
like that.
technically ethical as a hunter standpoint. Yes.
What kind of feedback have you gotten? I mean, you posted it on social media. What kind of feedback have you gotten so far?
So far I've gotten positive feedback from everybody. I've yet to come across a couple of people that have had given me negative feedback. I think it's last time I looked, I think it was right around 37,000 views for my first live video. It was right around 30. I think it's 37,000 that's sitting at right now. So, and
Wow, I'm
that's
gonna look at it
and
right now.
it's quite a bit. I'm shocked. Usually I sit around 1,500, 2,000 views on videos that I post. And
Was it on Res Hounds,
yeah,
Calvin? I'm gonna take a look at it and see what it's got. Live. You're sitting at 38.1 thousand views on that video.
yeah, and that's quite a bit. I mean, from for a small, you know, small small town native boy like myself, yeah, that's quite a bit.
That's really cool. And they can find it. You can find the whole video on Calvin's Facebook page at Res Hounds, REZ Hounds, and it's the first live video that pops up there. And how many dogs do you have again on
I
that?
had 10, 6 finished and 4 pups.
I got you. I got you.
So
Yeah, cool.
I mean, it
Cool.
was exciting. I mean, I've never seen it happen. I've never seen anybody post it, and I've talked to a couple of other older houndsmen that have told me, I've heard people say that they've done it before. But I've never seen photos. I've never seen video of actual visual proof that they have done it. It's just word of mouth. So and so did it, or this
Yeah.
person's done it before.
Well, I mean, even if you go back as far as the Lee brothers, or they documented things. Somebody would have told that story, and it would have come up somewhere. I've never heard of anything like it. I can't find anything like it. And I'm just sticking to Calvin Redhouse as the first person in the history of houndsmen that have ever done it. Seriously.
I mean, I'm just delighted, happy to see it. Is it once in a lifetime? Oh yeah. Will it happen again in my lifetime? Oh no, probably not. To be honest with you, I mean,
right.
I don't know how many people commented, "Hey, you better go buy yourself a lottery ticket."
I think you might have. You might have been handed a winning lottery ticket right here,
then,
Calvin.
And then I would teach my wife, hey, let's go to the casino. Maybe I might hit it big. And then she just laughed at me, shook her head, and like, yeah, you're getting a big head now. So,
well, Calvin, I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk to you and get the scoop right from the source. And I know that people just need to follow you on social media. That's how we got to know you. Is just one of the hardest hunting guys I know, and you just go up there and get after it every day.
Yeah, I was gonna go back out this morning. I did, but the dog. We've been running so much that some of the dogs were actually kind of sore. So I watched them this morning, and they were barely getting out of their dog boxes. And I was like, yeah, you guys can relax for a little bit, So probably not until this weekend we'll be hitting it hard again.
Yeah. We've told your story on the podcast before about how you just hunt hard and make good dogs, and you're doing it in a great place. So thanks for taking the time to share the story with us, Calvin. I appreciate it, man.
Yep, no problem, man. Anytime.
All right. Stay in touch.
Will do.